Hi, everyone. This is Heather with another Homeschool Live, and I am here today with Dustin Goss. He is a serial entrepreneur and a go to market product and brand strategy specialist. He has actually started multiple businesses over the past 2 decades, and I am so excited for him to share with us about his Buck Academy series. This is a financial literacy program for kids, which he is going to share with us, and I am so excited. Dustin, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Dustin, can you share with us exactly why you started Buck Academy?
Well, having a family of your own and having children in your stewardship kind of gives you that purpose and desire to want to teach those that we raise, right? So my own kids really is my motivation, and just watching as they started to go through this journey of, hey, I want this, I want that. What is this? What is that? When it comes around money, we just really wanted to find a simple format that allows us to have the conversation around money and introduce it in a way that just brings it into a relatable and relevant and retainable experience for our own children. So that's where the Buck Academy book started to come from, was just this, what's a simple introduction, and how do you kind of start that process with your children and then groom them along the years as they turn into teenagers and need to understand more about the 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 intensity around money, right? The money can be intense. It can be looked at as a tool. So what we really try to lay down is the simple principles that money's a tool, right? We don't live for it. We absolutely need it, right? And you can say it's not water, but it is a resource that gets us all those things that we need. And it's in some regards, it's an absolute. Like, we all go trade our time for money. And what we want at the end of the day is for our children to understand that the money they traded their time for is a tool. And if you use it properly, you can achieve financial freedom versus being a slave to the almighty dollar.
That's really good. And I love how you saw a need and then you developed a product to fulfill that need. And, with your own children, of course, you want to give them the best that there is available. And so, can you explain, because I have children of my own, and I remember that first struggle with my first kid when they saw what they wanted. They saw all those sets, of bricks that they wanted to buy. And how do you explain to them, the value of that? Can you tell us exactly what Buck Academy is and how it works?
Sure. So we've just really put together it's a systematic approach where Buck is a character that we've created, and Buck carries along the conversation as kind of the financial expert, right? If we really kind of dig back and we look into the school system, or you go back 3 or 4 generations, more like 4 generations, where people saved their money to buy items before credit existed. Mid 20th century credit cards were developed, and it started out with this diner club card, and then it kind of permeated into these other things, and all of a sudden everybody had access to all this credit in America, and it changed the culture of the way that we behave with money. And it's kind of like electric bikes right now. Everybody's driving around and you see a bunch of 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds on electric bikes, and they're zipping through intersections and using left-hand turn lanes, but they have no education or understanding around the rules of the road. So they don't
Mm,
understand right away. Unfortunately, if a teenager was just struck where we live here in California
oh,
yesterday, and
wow.
it's very sad, but it's similar path with money. You're just kind of shoved out the door and say, hey, you got an education now. You understand how to read and write. Oh, but you're going to go earn this thing called money. Well, what's that?
Mm,
Because nobody teaches it in the school system. So, and where we do try to teach it in the school system, it's just a very small baseline understanding of what the currencies are, what a check is, what
right.
what what a bank is. Not really getting into the the dynamics of the depths of the details with how you can use money as a tool versus allowing it to own you. And those that don't know how to obtain it or work for it in abundance, then we end up with different levels of income and poverty and wealth. And um, it that leads to stress. And if
Yeah.
we look at the number one stressor In this country, according to the American Psychology Association and the FDIC, it's money. And I think at the root of it, if we teach our children more about money at a younger, earlier age, they will have a different relationship and behavior with it throughout their life.
Absolutely.
That's what we're
And
doing
I
at Buck.
really oh, go ahead.
That's what we're doing at Buck Academy, just trying to give those practical tips and curriculum pieces for parents to be able to put in front of their children so they can get on a journey and be guided through an understanding about money.
And it's funny how you mentioned, maybe in the school system, they'll teach about writing checks. And I laugh because most people don't even balance checkbooks anymore. So that's kind of an outdated tool. I mean, most people can just get online and everything's done, with online with the bank that they're a part of. I mean, it's definitely a good skill to have, but you're talking more about, spending habits and the whys behind what we're spending, and not getting into debt, which is so crucial and so important. Um, can you tell us how your materials work? So, is this an online academy? Are these physical products? What exactly would somebody be purchasing when they're getting involved with this?
So at Buck Academy, we've started with physical books, and we started this journey a little over 5 years ago. And so we've published books, we've created our characters, and those are there to kind of read with the kids and kind of go through your practical turn the page books. And we still believe in those in our household. We read lots of books with the kids. The kids flip through paper pages. I think there's just a different level of retention that comes from that. But then what we started to do a couple years ago was digitize a curriculum, and we've created a curriculum and an app system called Buck One that is mobile based, that guides the children through a curated and structured curriculum that's delivered weekly. So what we've really done is created a small drip system with little snackable lessons. So it's 2-minute video first lessons that are delivered by our characters, and then there's a little quiz. So with the world of online education, it is hard to verify that somebody's actually learning what they've set out to accomplish. So you can go through a class and check all the boxes, and at the end of the day, it says that you did it and you scored a passing grade. How much did the child retain, or how much did the young adult attain in that process? And I think this is where I don't want to get into the dynamics of like the older Gen Zs, but a lot of the workforce employers are saying that the younger workforce is not cut out to take on these early jobs because they're not delivering a level of expectation that education's being delivered differently. And the world's changing so quickly around us. If we really look at the facts what some experts say is in the next 10 years, we'll see more innovations than we've seen the last 100.
Wow.
That's just going to blow by all of us right now. But the digital natives, our children, right?
Hmm.
They're almost born with these devices in their hands. That's
Right.
where a lot of the Gen X or the millennial parents have had access to these, but not had the same level of intimate experience as the younger children right now. So when you go back and we look at the lack of physical resources, you talked about a checkbook or balancing a checkbook, right? These things have disappeared. None of us are going to go balance a checkbook anymore. You're going to go into your online statement and reviews the activities and things, but we're taking away some of the simple practical elements around budgeting. And I go back to the savings culture. The savings culture has disappeared because we've been given instant access to buy what we want with credit, and then to figure out how to pay that off. So
Right. Yeah,
that's
that becomes the game, right? Okay, how can I get this paid off before I need to pay, the minimum amount due, or, that becomes the game instead of trying to save.
yeah. One practical piece. If anybody leaves here with one thing, and there's probably a question later, but I'm just going to say it now. I'll say it again. If we were all taught to save 10% of everything we earned from an early age, if you started earning at 15 and a half or 16 and you saved 10 cents of each dollar that you earned, and you put that into a cash savings account, and then utilize that for investments later, it is a solid base by the time you're in your mid 30s, 40s, you have a really stable foundation of investments and security with 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 your money.
And this is something we can teach our kids, even if it's something we didn't understand growing up ourselves. I know my husband, he came up with a forced savings plan similar to that, where as soon as our kids turn 13, they have to save a certain amount each
Mm.
month. And that is not something I did or he did as a kid. But, we're saying, okay, we're going to try to hit the ground running with this because it's so important. We didn't learn it, but we can still teach this to you, and they can still apply these principles. But it's hard to know if you're my age and you weren't taught those principles. Can you share with us how Buck Academy can help homeschooling families get their kids, just planted in the right place with this?
Well, number one is you got to meet your children where they're at, right? You can't just force them into something that they're not interested in. And that's just a very important thing, I think, for anything we're going to teach our children. Meet them where they're at, right? Don't expect them to be where you think they are or whatnot. Just like go to them. If you need to get down on the floor and play in the toys or whatever they're doing, if they're at that age, or go off to an activity with them and hang out and be their friend. We have to meet our children where they're at. And I had an answer to your question and I spaced it.
How you can help homeschooling families, how Buck
Oh,
Academy can help homeschooling families.
well, Buck Academy, we have the books, and then what we're really doing is with Buck One. It's a brand new program that we're bringing to market, and it's a digitized experience. So we've created this digital hug, if you will, kind of a family environment. Because where's an app where you're really going with your children at the same time? So money is one of those topics that kind of allow us to do that. The kids start to desire it, and when they get a little older, they start turning 12, 13, 14. Now they're really realizing where money fits into their life and they're looking for it. So how do we continue to engage them in understanding and appreciation for earnings? We kind of do that in our system with Buck One. And then taking them through an understanding around the physical elements of banking and the experiences of banking, and have a savings account and spending account, and understanding what that means. Understanding the difference. You'd be surprised that statistics show that about a third of the teenagers don't really understand the difference between a credit card and a debit card.
Mm,
Right? It just seems very elementary,
yeah.
but you think about these kids, they grow up and they just see us using plastic cards. They
Yeah.
don't understand that one carries a heavy penalty and the other one is your cash.
Right.
So there's these differences that are just being transposed on our children so quickly. It's like giving them an electric bike and
Yeah.
saying, hey, yeah, you can go 5 miles down the street to your friend's house. But they don't understand the lights. They don't understand the rules of the road. And
Yeah.
money's not much different. There's plenty of I don't want to call them rules, but they're best practices.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to teach with Buck One, and that's where Buck Academy takes you. So it's a systematic approach that allows you to guide your children. And that's what we're finding to be one of the best ways. But to think about also the life lessons that have escaped, right? A lot of these components, cash. How much cash do most people carry these days, right? It's not a necessity, so our children don't see us utilizing cash. And
Right.
some people still pay cash allowances, but yet they have no cash other than anything else except to give the kids cash. So
Yeah.
this is also what we do at Buck One, is we really help the family engage a digital surrounding with the money, and put the money into a digital environment. And if you can do that and guide your kids for the fundamental years when they're a teenager, by the time they're out of the house, they have a behavior and a relationship with money that is most likely healthy.
Wow, that's really good. So I'm curious. So the app, the Buck One, so this is a curriculum, or is this something that has like a practical element where the kids actually do something with the money?
Uh, there is a curriculum, so there's an LMS in there. There's an organization called the OECD. It's Economic Council Development and they are an international organization, but they went out several years ago and asked the G20 nations, as you're teaching children about financial literacy, what do we teach them? So they culminated together all these lessons and practicalities from Germany and different European nations and Canada and the U.S. And they said, okay, top educators from these nations have come up with these pieces. They created a framework. We took that framework that they created and put out as open source in the world, and we created a curriculum that maps back to it. And in that curriculum, we just really thought about the practical tips and experiences with money and how we could deliver that to children and help the parents be able to guide them with that experience with money. So that's our LMS component. And then there is the banking component of it, where you have a spending and a savings account, and you get a debit card, and you can give that to the child when you believe that they're ready, if they think that they're ready for 12. But that piece is there, and then we have um, the engagement side. So there's the banking services, the LMS, and the earnings management. And
Love
Buck
that.
Academy feeds those lessons into Buck
Yeah.
One. So that's what we've taken the Buck Academy lessons and fed them into Buck One, so that we can deliver that in a digital experience.
So powerful that you are meeting the kids where they're at and not using, like you said, just the cash model, that we might have been used to, with our kids giving us the cash allowance. I just love that you are meeting them exactly where they're at. So, I would love if you could share maybe a little bit from this presentation here that can maybe help parents, just understand the whys of why it is important to be teaching about finances, and just maybe some of the statistics that you have that can really help us grasp just the problem with finances and parents being able to teach properly how to teach their kids today.
Yeah. So if we think about some of the tools like collecting coins, or one of the things in this knocking little knock on my head for years in my early 20s was write a book about the value of a dollar. And I never understood it and I never did it. And then as soon as we had kids, I started thinking about it more and more, and I started framing out a book about the value of a dollar. And what that turned into was introduction to the physical currency. And that's Buck making sense. And we go into the depths of the money. Like if you look at the history of currency when it first started thousands of years ago, it was to be able to create a respected, appreciated item that, so if you were a farmer and you had cows, you couldn't put a cow on your over your shoulder and walk down to the market and make a trade, right? So we needed to have something that allowed us to trade, and that just turned into money over the years. But when you go back to the roots of America and you look at the depths of the imagery in our money, there's so much meaning and belief into the symbols of the wheat and the eagles and the presidents and all the components that are put into the thought around money. And then the nation's motto, in God we trust, is on every piece of our money, because it's faith. We have faith in money. That's why money exists. And this is God's country, so we have faith in what we do, and how we move along. So we look at taking the simple items such as a piggy bank and thinking about, well, that piggy bank is not so relevant for our children today.
Mm.
There's a certain factor of it that still is, but how long are we going to have these physical coins?
Yeah.
Because I don't like putting them in my pocket. They're they're more of a nuisance and thinking about all the germs on them, than they are helpful. And we don't really have to utilize them so much as we can spend with our, make a payment with our phone.
Right.
So if you click into a couple things here, we can just kind of quickly give a couple highlights. Does America have a money problem? Well, no, I'd say in some regards, but no, what we have is an education problem.
Mm.
And it's that money just gets disregarded and it gets put to the back of the line. And we hear it from more school systems that, oh, well, we have a problem with the children eating lunch, or, having sufficient food. Well, if we start teaching about financial literacy today, maybe in a decade, you're not worried about them eating because they've taken care of the aspects around their finances. And the
Right.
reason that they're not eating is because they don't have the money to buy the food. So it's kind of chicken before the egg kind of problem. So
Yeah.
we look at how do we help resolve that, and I think that starts at home. It starts with a parent being proactive in finding tools and finding a way to guide their children to understand money. Some households are good at it. Unfortunately, 70% of households don't talk about money at home. And so they're not talking about the do's and the don'ts. So you can go to the next slide there. So why should we teach about money and the relationship about it, right? It's everywhere. And it has all these consequences. And ultimately, at the end of the day, those of us that take longer to learn about money have more stress in life. So we're trying to help reduce stress. We're trying to help promote mental well-being and mental awareness, and money is one of those things. If you're aware about how to behave with money, you're likely to do much better with it. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, most of America is just not aware how to behave with money.
Right.
That's probably the biggest reason there. Next slide. Here's just a simple fact. These kids today, our children, are so smart. They're way smarter than all of us ever were, right? They are the digital natives. We're the
Right.
digital immigrants. And the digital natives have a complete different understanding and knowledge intake than we ever will. So these kids, it is amazing to hear 6-year-olds talk about money. Oh, I have $7 and I'm going to buy this. And in some ways, you're like, oh wow, I don't really want them to be talking about that right now, but we can't hide it. The gaming industry is bigger than all the movies and all the music entertainment together.
Hmm.
Gaming is massive, and gaming is obviously attracting our children, but they have found ways to monetize it, and that's the reason why it's one of the largest industries in the world. And that if we don't teach our children about money and about the potential little pitfalls of people trying to always lure it away from you, it's one thing to earn it, one thing to save it, but now you have to also think about who's trying to get it from you, right?
Wow.
And that's that spending side. So we need to be very careful, and I think that's why it's more important to teach our children at a younger age right now. They're smart, they get it, and they're really developing their behavioral principles at an early age, around 7 or 8.
Right. I think it's really good you brought that point up because I remember the first time I ever saw the opportunity to purchase something for a fake world online. Like you could spend money and receive, buildings in your fake world. I was thinking, this is ridiculous. Who would fall for that? but but I mean it's a thing and that's what people do because that's where they live. They live in online. So of course that's how they're going to spend their money. And now there's all kinds of apps that are, trying to get your money so you can go to the next level. And at first that completely blew my mind, but now it's the norm. And so these kids aren't going to have that check like, oh, maybe that's not how I should spend my money. So it's good that, we're teaching them, in this world because it's changed a lot over the years.
That it has. Next slide there. The simplicity of spending and savings. It might seem too elementary or too trivial for most, but really, you think about how much better we all could do around it. Like there's always room for improvement, and some people could be tremendous savers, but some people just spend everything the minute it hits the bank account. And we do have statistics that show that a large majority of America lives paycheck to paycheck, and even six-figure earners. 4 out of 10 six-figure earners live paycheck to paycheck. So it's more money you make, the more money you spend. And I think that's what starts at an early age as well, is really giving them the understanding around saving, and then how to manage those savings and make better decisions. And again, I'll go back to talk about the do's and the don'ts, because the don'ts are just as important as the do's. And sometimes those get left off the table. And anywhere, not just getting into gaming because the kids love games, but gamify your approach. Like, we all love playing little games, and it's something that makes it fun, keeps it light with the children.
Yeah.
I another, you think you can click the slide here, but another important kind of fact around money is, what is money? When you look at it on paper, it's numbers. So it's math. So, just be careful. Some kids just despise math. They feel uncomfortable with the numbers, or it's not their place, right? We all just have a different place where we belong. And those that don't like numbers tend to think like, oh, well, I don't want to pay attention to money. Well, but it's like, you need to drink your water and you need to have some vegetables. So you really should pay attention to money, even though it's math. It's not math. It's simplified math. And if you look at the numbers that are connected to money, some see fear with that, and they just decide to not pay attention to it. And at the end of the day, that's going to create more stress.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I never thought of it that way. But looking at my 5 kids, the one who struggles with math, she also is one that just doesn't even want to touch money. So that's really interesting you brought that up.
And again, you go back to just meet your children where they're at, always, like in whatever topic it is. I think that's just one of the greatest pieces of advice I've learned as a parent. Right. But I have a lifetime of parenting to do. So we're always continuing trying to do self-examination and keep things simple for our kids, but keep them rich. And I think the last piece here, from what we do with money is, and what we've really learned with teaching money, is a lot of the programs and a lot of financial literacy out there, there's a ton of it. Every university has a free program. There's all kinds of programs on the internet. They're enrichment based, and enrichment simply doesn't work with money, because now you're expecting somebody to show up and learn about something that isn't mandatory. And so that's why the lessons and the delivery with money are best when they're just these small snackable little pieces that kind of come along. And that's what we do with Buck One. Is it's a weekly lesson.
Okay.
About impulse spending, about what a credit card is, about another way to save. It's just a weekly little gold nugget that keeps the topic of money current, relevant and retainable and relatable. And retention, right? We don't live for money. It's a tool, right? We cannot love money. We cannot express love for money. That's just a dangerous place to be, but it's a tool. And if you use it as a tool, it will enhance your life and you'll find financial freedom. And we all want our kids to have the best life.
Absolutely. That's really good. So I know that those watching are really excited about your product, about Buck One. Can you tell our audience how they can find out more?
You can find Buck Academy information at buckacademy.org. We have social channels out there. And then you can go to buck1.org and you can sign up for our app. We are launching to friends and family in August and broad market in September. And anybody who goes and signs up, we would love to give you a friends and family invite and get you, special promotions along the way. But really start the journey to guiding your children about money and how to behave properly with it.
That is wonderful. I am so excited. I know that a lot of the parents watching are excited to have this resource, have these tools available for them. Do you maybe have one last piece of advice for parents who might be watching about teaching finances to their children?
Good question. One last piece of advice.
You shared so much. You have
I didn't hold anything back. No, money's everywhere. So just know that there's teachable moments around all kinds of twists and turns through our day, and bring it up. And don't be shy because you don't know enough about it, right? Because many of us didn't learn about it. And that's a big reason why we're teaching it. We weren't given the knowledge about money. And you get to a later part in life and you're like, retirement? What's this thing? What's that? So money's everywhere. Just think about that. Talk about it. Talk about the do's and the don'ts. And if you're not comfortable with the topic, then lean on somebody like Buck, where you can have an intermediary who can talk about and deliver the messages around money in a comfortable sense.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate this product that you have created for families. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in for another Homeschool Live. And I hope you will join us next time for our roundtable that will be coming up with Diane Craft and CTC Math. So check your inboxes, check our social media, and we will give you more information on that. So thank you again and have a wonderful day.